Yo, check out my website, www.theclownthompson.net. That's clown spelled with K as you see here. As you see, here are my rants here. I'll be more and more regular in posting rants in the future. You see what I have going on here. Also, you can also get your merch here at www.cafepress.com. Search for the Clown Time Sports. You see here I have sweatshirts, hoodies, baby gear, mugs, t-shirts. So just come on over and grab yourself some merch.
Welcome to tonight's college football preview edition of a particular conference of the Klown podcast. Scott Burks, please see to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. And I have a very sneaky feeling that some of y'all are not going to agree with what we're going to say tonight regarding our preview of the one particular Atlantic Coast Conference. So if you agree or disagree, just comment anyway. I enjoy the back and forth because in any event, you're going to be glad you did, and I'll be glad you did. All right. So I mentioned the Atlantic Coast Conference. You know who this guy is to my left. He blogs all things ACC on the All Sports Discussion blog, along with our guy, Hokie Smash, otherwise known as Matt Warner. And you can find him on Twitter as well. We'll get to all that in a moment. He is back. Jeff Fan is back to continue our conversation from last week as far as expansion and break down this year's ACC football season. How you doing, sir?
Doing good. Glad to be back, Scott.
Right on, right on. So I mentioned continuing our discussion from last week because I wanted to float this realignment theory right quick of what the ACC I feel the ACC missed on. But right quick, with all the news that's still surrounding Stanford, Cal, and I think maybe SMU, not so much anymore. I heard that there were rumors about bringing at least two of those three schools in. What have you been hearing?
Yeah, I would. It's kind of changed even since last week when we talked about it. When Stanford basically came out and said that they would take a greatly reduced share or almost, they would almost join the ACC for free.
Yeah.
And that came out at the end of last week. And that's just another scenario that, has changed the dynamic of this whole thing. Friday morning, I'm listening to ACC radio, and former Florida State quarterback EJ Manuel, he's doing a show with West Durham, and he said, hey, if they're really going to come in at that much of a reduced share, he said it's a no-brainer to add them. That was his exact, words, and Durham agreed, and that had changed it just from a couple days previous. I don't think there's still no doubt that geographically it makes no sense. I mean, no one's going to argue that. It doesn't make any sense geographically, but in my opinion, who's cared about, geographic sense and realignment in like 15 years? So it seemed to be gaining some momentum. There were rumors they were going to have a president's meeting again today that turned out to be canceled. I personally do not think this is a dead topic. I think that this is what I believe to be happening, and I have nothing other to base this on than just my own personal opinion. But because of what Stanford came out and said, I think they are rerunning all of the scenarios possible. How much can each ACC team get? They've got one vote they have to flip, and I'm kind of leaning that it's going to happen. May not. It absolutely may not. Right now, I would put it at about a 50-50 odds, but
Wow.
I think it's not out of the question that it could happen, because when you look at two or more teams that join and they're at greatly reduced shares, I mean that money goes back into the conference, and if you're adding back $3, $4, $5 million to an ACC program that's $30 million behind, you're telling me you can make one move already makes up 10 to 20% of that gap. It's kind of like, well, you got to do it. To me, throw the geography out the window. If you make 5 million here, 2 million there, another 3 somewhere else, and all of a sudden you've got that number down to a more manageable 10 or 15 million, but
Right.
we'll see. I mean, it wouldn't shock me either way at this point, but I think it's still on the table.
I've been back and forth about this, dude. As you know, I've been back and forth
Yep.
like a yo-yo. Because we all can agree that this makes no geographic sense whatsoever.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that.
I mean, it's like the logistic nightmares for your non-revenue sports. Oh my God, I feel so sorry for those kids, especially those coming from the West Coast, right? But the more I think about it, man, it comes, and I know that they don't add value to the collectible line in terms of football, right? Because this is all this is about. It's about football at the end of the day. I will say this to your point. For SMU and Stanford, because SMU, people don't realize how rich SMU is.
Yeah, they're rich.
They are stupid rich. Please Google "It Is Your Friend." You will see how rich that school is. Doesn't matter they're not in the Power Five right now. They are freaking rich to the point that they said we will forego, period, our revenue share for the next 3 to 5 years. If for any school that says that and still wants the conference that bad to be included in the Power Five, they're going to be just fine. They're not hurting for cash, not at Stanford. So, I mean, and to your point, so going back to this, let's just say for the sake of argument, Stanford and Cal come in at maybe half, right? So what each ACC schools get roughly what, 39 to 40 million average. So if you take half, right, per school, right? So so you take half, and so that's what, 40. Yeah, that's about 40 total. Then take SMU's total, yearly total, and you have to add that to that 40, that gives you 80. So 80 divided evenly, well, divided to the 15 schools is just Notre Dame, but I think that ought to be spread as well. So let's just put the difference and say, what is it? I said 80, right? So let's just say like each school average like the schools outside of Notre Dame get like 70 apiece. I mean not 70 apiece, but that's 70 to be divided into the 14, and then some of that goes to Notre Dame. So that will be what North Carolina math would tell me. That's what little over 5 million per. So you take that 5 million just from that 5 million added to the 40 million, you get 45. Now, whatever like money they will make from having the CW deal expired to go to ESPN, that's going to bump them up, say like for the sake of argument, another 5 million, right? So that's $50 million. That ain't bad. I'm not saying it's great, but the deficit, I mean, if you talk about the SEC schools, the Big Ten schools averaging around 70-ish, to come in with at least 50, that's a dent. And there may be more than that.
Yeah, you're making a dent. You're getting it to where it's, again, a manageable deficit. I mean, right now the ACC, I think on that last one they were already, 15 million behind the Big Ten, and they've been 8, 10, 12 million behind for quite a while, and it hasn't affected the competitiveness.
That's correct.
On the field. So if you get that down to about, if you get it down to 10, 12 million, suddenly you can work with that. Okay, yeah, 30, 40 over extended period of time is unsustainable. But like I said, you knock 5 off here, and then you were saying, knock another 5 off on something else, and you get another improvement, with something else you're trying to do, and I mean, and then it becomes workable. And it's all about money now. I mean, we hate to say it. You really should care more about the student athletes, the geography of it all, what really makes sense. But I mean, it's just not that way anymore, unfortunately.
Right.
You just gotta survive. And actually, even though and I think we talked about it last week, we disagreed with, what Notre Dame said. In principle, what their AD Jack Swarbrick said is that it's true. two programs, schools like Cal and Stanford should not be, in a conference like the Mountain West. They should be
Correct.
able, with those athletic programs, to be, in conferences that play at the highest level of sports. What he said was right. Now, the way he went about it was wrong because, Notre Dame's not giving up anything to make it happen. But I mean, in principle, I mean, I agree. You look at Oregon State, they won a baseball national championship just like in 2018. They just went to the Elite Eight a couple years ago in men's basketball, and they had a top 15 football team. And you're telling me that, oh, that's no good. They get to just be in the Mountain West Conference. I mean, that's a legitimate athletic program
Right.
that's now fighting for its life. So, I mean, I have no problem if the ACC, just goes out there and gives those teams a home, provided that there is some financial benefit. I mean, this is a business, no freebies, but if the
Yeah.
numbers work out, I have no problem.
Now, because one more thing about this before we put a red bow, and I'll let you get the last word if you want. The arguments that people like Joe Ovius and Joe Guglio make, and that's a great podcast, by the way. So shout out to them if you get a chance to see on YouTube. They're of the opinion that I've always been of the opinion that if it made financial sense to the ACC, they would have done this yesterday, right? Instead of holding so long. But I think you and I share a brain is that the difference. Like if those three schools really are going to come in at a smaller, if not zero, like compensation, if you will, because they want in to be included so badly and not be left out in the cold, so to speak. And if that money goes to the rest of the schools and conference, that could go a long way into making up the difference. Would they ever catch the SEC and the Big Ten? No. The Big Ten especially has got a head start, had years of head start. However, I just think that if you're the ACC, if you're Jim Phillips, who we both loathe at most of the time, right? You got to be creative. You have to be creative, and I think for that reason, I've gone for there ain't a chance in hell that those three schools will be included to 60-40 at this point. Because it comes down to your point, dollars and cents. It comes down to the fact that they'll have the exposure on the West Coast. It comes down to the fact that, hey, ESPN, now you have some inventory on the West Coast, and you get in the state of Texas with a rich program like SMU that, like I said, is rich with a capital R. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if it happens. It all comes down to the money. If that there's only like if there's no financial gain to it, or it's really small, we're talking like a couple million or less, then yeah, then I completely understand and makes sense not to go for it. I mean, geographically, again, makes no sense whatsoever. It's all about where those financial numbers come out.
Right. So before we get to the preview of the teams, collectively, obviously, remember, like I teased a theory that I believe the ACC missed out on, like an expansion theory. So follow me up with this one. If you think I'm full of nut, if you think I'm full of crap, just shout it out. I'm a big boy, I can take it. Remember when Oklahoma and Texas made the announcement, heard around the college sports world that they were leaving Big 12 for the SEC, and that seemingly like that Big 12 rather was seemingly on the clock, same way that the Pac-12 was before the series of stupid ass moves that the conference made. I think the ACC missed a chance. I think they missed a chance to really talk about being the hunter, like the Big 12 has been under Brett Yormark, commissioner. I think they missed out on this. And I think it goes back to the similar hubris that the Pac-12 schools had with some other schools. I think they missed out on West Virginia, taking West Virginia for the Big 12. And I think that they really missed out on getting Cincinnati. Because if you look at it this way, if you take a look at West Virginia, who are West Virginia's biggest rivals? They're both in the ACC, Pitt and Virginia Tech. UC's rivals, Cincinnati's rival. Who's Cincinnati's biggest rival? Louisville and Pitt. Again, both in the ACC, right? And they have a natural rival with West Virginia due to proximity. But the point is, I think that Jim Phillips and those schools were short-sighted and not bringing in those two schools. Because again, to me, if they made that move, that would eliminate to me the need to go out or the possible desire to go out to look at a Stanford or the Cal or even FC, because you've increased in membership numbers from 14 to 16 football playing members. You get the cohesion that you're looking for. Academics be damned. And because you can imagine the juicy matchups in college football. Pitt and Cincinnati will be playing this year, second week of the season at Pittsburgh, at part of a home and home. Pitt's playing West Virginia again in the backyard brawl. I don't know if West Virginia's playing Virginia Tech this year. I don't think they are. But the point is, and then Cincinnati and Louisville. Louisville's only an hour and a half down Interstate 71. I think the ACC and their short-sightedness missed out on that. And, would it be attractive to Notre Dame? I don't know. But I think they missed out on that. It would be at 16 already. They would be preparing for a 16-team league next year with all those rivalries, natural rivalries coming back. What say you? Am I nuts or what?
No, I think there was an opportunity for both the Pac-12 and the ACC when Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12. The Pac-12 had a chance to pick up on some of those West Coast schools in the Big 12. The ACC, could have invited West Virginia, even though they said that they were revenue neutral. It's like you said, it's about, sometimes it's not always about, making more money. It's about, getting rid of the competition. And the Big 12 and ACC could have carved up the Big 12 a couple years ago and, failed to act. And now they're the aggressive one. I mean, even it's when you do these moves, the Big 10 just took Oregon and Washington at half value, doesn't add value at all to what they're doing. But it was like, well, they're available. Let's do it. We're going to, this is for something down the road. So sometimes you do the stuff preemptively to get rid of the competition, and they had an opportunity and they missed it. That would have been a pretty good move, I would say, to get a Cincinnati and then to take West Virginia. You would have totally killed off the Big 12. Yeah,
I agree. And I think, to your point, that's what makes it so baffling. One more thing about that is because, at least under Swofford, former Commissioner John Swofford, he understood that. That's why he was aggressive in going after the Big East, because they're bringing those natural rivalries. They brought in the Miami, Florida State. They bring in Boston College, Virginia Tech for the University of Virginia for that rivalry. You bring in Syracuse and Pitt to go with Boston College.
Yeah,
he saw this. He saw it. He saw it coming.
Yeah, so, he gets a lot of criticism, but he also did some things that were spot on. He took the best football programs from the Big East. When Miami came to the ACC, they were pretty recent, really close to just a few years of removed from those unbelievable 2000, 2001 teams, and they were still really good when they came in 2004 or 5. Virginia Tech was a premier program in the Big East. He did exactly what he should have done. He took the best football programs from his biggest competition. Okay, Virginia Tech lived up to, their reputation with Frank Beamer. They were the ACC's best program for several years, and we know about Miami. They have not been, they've been a shell in the entire time they've been in the ACC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I just limit the fact that we have not been proactive participants instead of being reactive participants and stuck with the process the possibility of adding Stanford, Cal, and SMU, albeit reduced to no rates, but still. We wouldn't have to worry about that if we added West Virginia and Cincinnati in the first place. But not here nor there, it is what it is. But I'm going to give my quick shout out to my sponsor right quick before we get to the last part of the podcast, to BetUS.com. So listen up, sports bettors. Your favorite sports book, BetUS, is back for their 30th year of NFL action. So with the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers their members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, UFC, and MLB. If you're looking for live in-game betting, incredible odds of daily odds for boosters, props, and parlays, they got them. How about fast payouts and customer one-on-one customer service? They have that too. So log to bet2us.com or call 800-792-3887. That's 800-79-BET-US. You can use the promo code TKT for the Klown Times as well. BetUS.com, where the game begins. All right, man. We're going to close this out with our predictions for upcoming 2023 ACC football season. With all this ridiculous talk of realignment, college football is finally here. Week 0 starts this weekend. You're smiling. I'm cheesing like a mug. I am excited about this dude. I mean, just look at us. We're both smiling. We're just so excited about this. So let me just say this. Yo, go ahead.
Catch up. Yeah, we can catch up with realignment in April of next year.
Exactly. So let me just go to with this, man. I'll start off with giving my two participants, my two best teams. The ACC was finally doing away with divisions. Thank the Lord, right? And I'll just give my dark horse for last, because I think it's obvious who the best teams are in this conference. It's Florida State and Clemson. Now, I will say this. I say for Florida State, I know they're getting heavily favored, and I can get it, and I can dig it, right? As people know, I grew up pulling for Florida State football because of family reasons. My mother's family was from Tallahassee, Florida. My great-grandmother lived only almost a hop, skip, and jump away from campus. My dad used to run there on the tracks a lot. We used to go there with them as kids. So it's embedded in me. I can't help it. It's just embedded in me. However, that's what saddens me for the past few years was FSU just sorely underachieving on the field, making too much unnecessary noise off the field, underperforming with like in terms of not allocating the funds, utilizing the funds properly to get them in this bind at the end right now. But at least they finished on a high note, going 10-3, beating Oklahoma in the Cheez-It Bowl. And so that was pretty cool. So they returned most of this team, and they got more studs coming through the transfer portal and through recruiting. But I'll say this, man. I think for Florida State, it comes down to what happens in week 1 against LSU. LSU has a lot of those guys coming back too. And they were good last year under first-year head coach Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly, say what you want about him at Notre Dame, especially here in Cincinnati, even though he took him to the stratosphere for Luke Fickell to build upon later on. But that guy can coach and recruit his tail off. And LSU looked like a damn good team by season's end. Yes, they got beat down in the SEC title game by Georgia. I mean, who didn't get beat down by Georgia last year? But the point is that Kelly has LSU in the right direction. They got the quarterback back and everything else. So this is my prediction. If Florida State wins week 1 against LSU, that would give them all the confidence in the world to go undefeated. I'm going to come out going to say right now. If Florida State wins and wins wins by double digits over I think it's going to be a great LSU team this year, they're going to be undefeated. They will have the confidence to go to Clemson and beat the man so they could be the man, to paraphrase the great Ric Flair, right? So with that being said, I want to still say that this is Clemson's conference to lose. But like I said, if Florida State beats LSU by double digits, they're going to have the best record. They'll beat Clemson. They're going to go undefeated, and they may finally climb the Clemson mountain in the championship game to give us the championship game that we've been clamoring for decades. That's why we wanted the division to be going. So you finally get the two best teams in the championship game.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I have Florida State as my favorite in the ACC. I mean, they're settled at the most important position on the field at quarterback with Jordan Travis. And when you got two really talented teams, like they both are, it usually comes down to quarterback. And I mean, I think Cade Klubnik, may turn out to be great. Um, they got a new offensive coordinator that, high flying, Riley out of TCU, and I think he is going to make their offense a lot better. But I mean, to ask Klubnik to play at a level where he's going to be able to defeat a guy who's going to be in the Heisman Trophy race, we think, um, and that talented team, they got the best defensive player in the league as well. You got the best quarterback, and I do think Jordan Travis is better than Drake May. Not that I don't think Drake May is fantastic. I think Jordan Travis is the kind of player that elevates his team, and I think Drake
Right.
May he's a great quarterback. He'll probably be a great pro, but I'm not sure he yet elevates his team in a way that Travis can.
Right.
I
And
think
I
I do
agree.
think. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say I agree. I share the brain view on that. Go ahead.
And I do think Florida State is going to beat LSU in that opening game. I mean, they've been looking towards that game the entire season. I know LSU is looking for revenge, but I mean LSU's got Alabama later in the year, and they know they can lose that game and still work themselves back towards the playoffs.
Right.
But with Florida State, their season probably gets defined by that game in many ways. As a national championship contender, and not that if they lose, they're completely out of it either. But they're going to have to run the table, and for them to get that's a lot of pressure on them. Well, I think LSU could lose, and we've seen two loss. Uh, I think last year when LSU they had a couple losses, but if they would have beat Georgia in that championship, they very well would have got back into the
Right.
playoff chase. So
Right. Right.
they got a little more margin for error. I do think Florida State loses when they play at Clemson, but I think when they meet again, and I think they will meet again in Charlotte, I think Florida State wins that game in Charlotte. So it might be a little bit too tall of a task to win in Death Valley,
Sure.
but I think Florida State wins the ACC, and I think at 12-1 they'll be in the playoffs.
Yeah. To me, I agree with you. If they beat LSU, I think they will. That gives them flexibility
Yep.
because they can lose in Clemson, to your point, and still be in the conversation for the college football playoff. Because we say perception, college football is probably the most subjective sport on earth. It's it's an ultimate beauty contest.
Yep.
So, if Florida State beats LSU, who, by the way, spoiler alert, I think LSU is going to win the SEC West this year. I'm just going to say it. But I think Alabama has too many question marks in the quarterback position, but that's not a here or there. But the point is that if they beat LSU, that gives them Florida State cachet, but it gives the conference some cachet because they're like, hey, look at this. Florida State, they beat who's going to be one of the top contenders in the SEC and LSU. It doesn't matter if it's Orlando, it's a win.
Yeah,
That
for
gives
sure.
a lot of talk. And if you look at the rest of the slate, I mean, Miami gets Texas A&M at home in week 2, I believe. Pitt plays Cincinnati at home. Pitt goes to West Virginia the following week. And then the beat goes on. So I think Syracuse plays Purdue again. I think Louisville plays Indiana this year as well. I'm just going off the top of my head. But the point is that it will give a lot of positive perception to the ACC. Now, mind you, none of us like the way Florida State conducted this business in the offseason. Yeah, they did some simple rattling, to say the least, to get some attention to the lack of the gap in television deals between the conferences. But if Florida State does what they say they're going to do, what they're supposed to do, that's great for the ACC, whether they like it or not. That's the biggest ironic part about the whole thing. The whole thing with me with the disparity goes away of the brands do what they're supposed to do. If Florida State wins, if Miami gets his act together, if Clemson keeps winning, and if North Carolina decides to play a little bit of defense, those are your athletic brands in the conference. And people could argue Virginia Tech as well because of the history. But the point is, if they do well, the conference does from a perception standpoint and a monetary standpoint. But I'll close this show and saying one last thing. You can add your own thought, of course, if you have one. Watch out for Pitt. Keep an eye on Pitt because all Pitt does, like Coach Narduzzi, rather, I just blanked there. He has that program going. I mean, they play great. They always play competitive defense, right? They're old school in terms of they want to ground and pound with you. They bring in the quarterback and Jakovich, who's a lot better than Cutting Clovis or whoever the young man's name is by a mile. And I'm telling you what, if they keep playing strong defense, because they get Florida State at home, in addition to playing UC and West Virginia out of conference. If I'm telling you, if Jakovich elevates the quarterback position as a transfer, if the defense still plays well, if the play in the trenches on both sides of the ball continue to improve under Narduzzi, tell you I think it's a 9-win team. I really do. I know that's a publication have them at 8 wins. Most of them have them at 8 wins, which ain't bad. But I think that's a 9-win team. I really do. With all 3 losses coming in conference play. But I think between them and God, I hate to say this, but Miami. If Mario Cristobal gets to stay together, I think Miami is an 8-9-win team. But that's still enough to make Florida State and Clemson a little bit uncomfortable. But I think those are the teams to look out for, especially Pitt. Look out for Pitt this year.
Yeah, I like the Pitt call. They seem to be coming in under the radar this year, and it seems like they keep coming in under the radar. But the other team, and I think you're gonna like this, that I'm looking at to be under the radar to keep an eye on is NC State.
Oh Lord.
I really do. I think they got a real shot. Week
Don't
2
jinx
with
us.
Notre Dame coming in for a noon game.
Right.
You got Robert and I reunited with Brennan Armstrong. We saw what he did at Virginia when they were together. I mean, a couple
Yes.
years ago, I mean, they were talking about him being ACC Offensive Player of the Year.
Right.
I mean, Brennan Armstrong can really play, and I'm not sure if NC State has the playmakers Virginia did a couple years back. But I mean, if that offense is a little bit more dynamic than what it was most of last year after Devin Leary got hurt, I mean, I think NC State can cause a lot of noise this year in the ACC because I like that defense. You got Peyton Wilson coming back. That's a pretty talented defense. I think is gonna cause a lot of problems. You get that offense to go with it. I think North Carolina State is one of the true wild card teams that can cause a lot of trouble this year in the ACC. We have to see, and I give them a puncher's chance against Notre Dame in week 2.
Man, look, the last thing I need is for another buddy of mine to jinx my Wolfpack. Because we are known for doing that. That's what the saying goes. NC State doing NC State things. So we'll see about that. I got one more question for you, and I'll let you go. One more question. It's a quick question.
All right.
Does Dino Babers get over 500, wins a bowl, and saves the job this year at Syracuse?
I mean, he's got Garrett Schrader on coming back, so he's got an experienced quarterback and really talented receiver, Rondy Gadsden. But wow, I mean, I was looking at their schedule, and I mean, I could see them going anywhere from 4-8 to 8-4. So you kind of split the difference,
Right.
and it's going to be. He's going to basically be on the NCAA bubble the entire season because I think the schedule has some difficulty to it.
Right.
But there are opportunities as well. I mean, I agree with you though. He's going to probably have to get to a ball game and win it. hit that 8-win mark to be retained, because I think just making a bowl game might not do it, and definitely if he ends up under 500, and I think he's a heck of a coach,
I do too.
but it's just so tough to get, the talent he needs up there to compete in the ACC. He's definitely on the hot seat. It's gonna be touch and go, I think, for him all year.
Yeah, I'm looking at the first 4 games, dude. Colgate at home, Western Michigan at home, at Purdue, hosting Army before they go to Clemson the following week. If they're not 4-0 before the Clemson game, it's going to be a long year for them. And again, to your point, I like Theodore Babers a lot. I think it's a breath of fresh air with his Game of Thrones quotes and everything else. But he has to get it done. He has to get it done. I think he does, by the skin of his teeth. I think they win 7 games, and one of those games being a bowl win. But prove me, hey, please, Dino Babers and the football guys out there, do your best. We want you to stick around, but you got to be 4-0 before you head into Clemson, because you cannot drop a game to Colgate, West Michigan, Army, and at Purdue. You can't drop any of those games.
Yeah.
You just can't. So quickly, man, tell the people out there where they can find you and your great work on the web and on Twitter.
Yeah, you can find me tweeting about the ACC, or what is it? Tweeting now or Xing? I don't know. But
who knows what Elon Musk is doing? But anyway, go ahead.
Talking ACC sports, and then also blogging throughout the year at allsportsdiscussion.com. We're going to try to keep the realignment talk at a minimum unless something actually happens. Right
knock
now,
on wood, but I don't know.
Yeah, knock on wood. So right now, we're just focusing on the upcoming season. We're looking forward to it.
There you go. And please check this guy's out. His great work out, him and Hokey Smash, aka Matt Warren, as I like to say. Please see a like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel. Even if you disagree with what any of us said, because in the end of it, you be glad you did, and I'll be glad you did. So until next time, till you hear from me again, take care. Enjoy this week 0 game of college football. I am so freaking excited. So excited. We're both smiling about it. I know you're smiling too. So you all take care. Stay cool in this heat and be well. Peace out.